Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Kathy knew that one day that day would come, but she didn't think it would be so soon. As recently as last week, she had heard the shopkeepers whispering quietly that their shop would soon close. But the woman did not pay much attention to such conversations because she believed in her own exceptionalism. After all, nowadays such times have come that cleaners everywhere are worth their weight in gold. In fact, it is the most sought-after profession. Everyone is trying their best to make it to the top. And these illusions on the floor of the mop no one has no desire. Therefore, for just a dozen years, the profession of cleaner moved into the category of scarce. Such thoughts warmed Kathy's soul and allowed to believe in a stable financial situation. At least for the next 5 years, she mentally encouraged herself on my piece of bread. It was unlikely that anyone would pry. Kathy cast a not-so-kind glance in the direction where the young shop girls were gathered to gossip. The girls were discussing something excessively, loudly, and did not dignify the cleaning lady with even a passing glance. Kathy had never felt socially uncomfortable. This time she was hurt by the disdainful attitude of the youth. To compensate for the loss of moral humiliation, she walked so close to the company that the wet equipment hit the tanned legs of one girl immediately bounced aside. "Couldn't you be more careful? What's with the mop-waving habit?" Kathy was not embarrassed. She stepped into the back room with an indifferent look, still mentally praising herself for her ingenuity. "No one can prove I did it on purpose, but I've put those dolls in their place, making a fool of themselves. And it's empty inside." She filled the bucket with clean water and already wanted to return to the sales room to continue her important mission, as in her seat looked the same girl on whose feet she went through with a floor cloth. The maiden remained at a safe distance just in case and addressed her as an object without gender or name. "The landlady is calling for you," she said to run away. First, the girl disappeared from sight, and only then the cleaning lady's door slammed. He muttered, "Culture's a little lame around here. All right, I'm gonna go to the carpet." Kathy got a job here right after her retirement, and her best friend put in a good word for her. After years of working in a library, she couldn't imagine herself as a cleaner. So Clara had to spend time and energy convincing her friend of the benefits of the job. Kathy doesn't even hesitate. You can't imagine how many people want the job. The salary is modest by today's standards, but in your position it will be a decent bonus. I'd take the job myself, but my health won't allow it. Clara was obviously exaggerating about her health, because in a day she could drive all over the neighborhood. For a while she went to organizations, offering people goods of dubious quality. Then there was a period when Clara sold lottery tickets, but the business did not go too well there, and the woman got out in time. However, she was not bored for long, because one of her acquaintances helped her to get a good job. Clara was so happy that she didn't hesitate to disturb her friend. At 10:00 p.m., she showed up in person and solemnly announced to Kathy, "This is my dream job. You have no idea how excited I am. I had a second wind." Since my friend, other than enthusiastic exclamations, didn't give me anything concrete, Kathy touched her forehead just in case, and only then I asked Clara, "Tell me, what kind of job is it that you can break into someone's house in the middle of the night for?" Clara, like a good actress, paused, and then with the same solemnity said, "Now I am a cashier in the toilet at the bus station. Today was my first day on the job. I was getting up to speed. The shock was worse than the painful shock." Kathy started giggling nervously in the hallway, but she was loud enough. What caught Kelly's attention? Daughter-in-one. "Mom's out in the hallway. What's going on in here? Are you sick?" Did that question bring Kathy back to normal? "No, daughter, I'm fine. It's just that Aunt Clara got a good job and decided to make me happy." Kelly looked suspiciously first at her mother and then at her friend. There's a reason they say everyone's got a little bit of a mind of their own. Now I was convinced that as I got older, there were more and more of them. Kathy thought that night, too, that her friend's mind was not right. If she's so happy with such, To put it mildly, not a prestigious job. But time has shown that prestige is nothing compared to the benefits. Clara always had good tips in addition to her main income. She could afford a manicure and styling once a week in the salon. Kathy had forgotten the last time she'd been to the hairdresser. She was used to denying herself a lot of things because there was always a catastrophic lack of money in the house. That's why she'd stuck to her job at the store with all her four limbs. Everything for the home. The outlet was located near the apartment complex where she lived, which was also a big plus. The store was popular among the residents of the neighborhood because the prices here were lower than in other outlets and the employees had benefits. In a word, it was a real plus. Except for the hostess. Wendy was a rather unpleasant person, and the store's employees were frankly terrified of her. But Mrs. Kulik had a special, one might even say, friendly relationship with the cleaning lady. She was a woman with a man's character, early widowed and single-handedly made her way to success. She began with a trade in a tent, and now owns several trading sites. The home improvement store was the most profitable. Wendy had both age and a son and family to depend on, and was always sympathetic to the difficulties and life of her subordinate. And now, as soon as Wendy showed up at the doorstep of her office, how were things going? Kathy replied with a sigh, yes, it's bad, but we're getting by. I'm in the same situation. My son and daughter-in-law are getting on my nerves. If they could give them somewhere for a while, by God, I would gladly do it. I can't bear to carry them on my back. Kathy sat down carefully on the edge of the chair and politely acquiesced. Though her fate with her mistress coincided in many ways, but there was a marked difference in rank. Therefore, during the visit of the cleaner tried not to violate the production etiquette. She had time to study Wendy's character well and knew that something important would follow the long preface. And indeed, after a lengthy overture, the main movement of the symphony with the resounding title, A Woman's Misfortunes, began. Wendy stared playfully at her subordinate with them. Kathy, we're going to have some drastic changes here, so I thought I'd give everyone advance notice so people have time to prepare. You already know about my family difficulties. Kathy nodded silently, not yet understanding what she was getting at. The hostess continued more cheerfully. For many years I fought with a family of idlers, tried to re-educate them. And the unbelievable happened. My son wanted to open his own business. Probably some beast in the nearby woods threw off its hooves. But it happened. You know, Kathy, I couldn't help but go to meet him. Wendy didn't yet realize how she was related to her mistress's son. Well, she replied, of course I understand, Wendy. That's fine. Then you and I won't have any trouble. The thing is, my Andrew wants to open a repair shop. He's an expert at it. He's a university graduate. And since I don't have any money to spare, we've decided to repurpose this store. Yes, Kathy finally got the meaning of the hostess's words, and she looked at her hopefully. I don't care where I clean the floors. I'll clean your son's workshop. Wendy remarked with annoyance, you still don't get it. The son will hire his own staff. Kathy persisted, but he would still need a cleaner. The landlady's face flushed red, and she blurted out in anger. I told you Andrew will be hiring a whole new staff. So as hard as it is for me, I will have to disband the entire staff. I've already offered the backroom salespeople new jobs at other stores. You're the only ones I've got hanging in the air. In short, you have exactly 1 month to look for a new job. Kathy realized that the conversation was over. She stood up and headed for the door. Thank you for the warning. The woman heard a sigh of relief behind her. No, she had no grudge against her landlady, but she thought she might as well take care of her. Almost 4 years I've been working here like the damned, so I gotta thank you after work. That day Kathy was walking and a lot of people didn't want to go. I couldn't get the talk with the landlady out of my head. And the future looked frightening. How are we going to live now? Kelly's maternity leave has dragged on, and she has no plans to go to work, although Robert is now 5 years old. Son-in-law is also in an endless search and hardly brings money into the house. The woman decided to have a serious talk with the household about further joint existence, But at home, a new misfortune awaited her. Grandson knocked over a cup of boiling water, and his clueless parents did not know how to help the child. They both rushed near the screaming baby, afraid to approach him. Their grandson's screams could be heard on the first floor. I was distraught with horror. The grandmother didn't wait for the elevator. She ran upstairs, skipping over 2 steps. She thought her heart was going to burst out of her chest. When she burst into the apartment, she rushed into the kitchen, where the tragedy was playing out. Robert was sitting on the floor, shaking his red claw-like hands. His parents froze nearby into pillars of some kind. Kathy picked up her grandson in her arms. "Why are you standing there like 2 mannequins? You can't do anything. You can't be trusted with your own child." In his grandmother's arms, Robert only quieted down quietly as she urged the boy to be patient. "My good man. Now we'll go to the doctor and have your hand treated. Tell at least how you steamed. Did the boy feed? I wanted tea, understandably. Mom had no time." Grandson sobbed loudly, as if to confirm the grandmother's version. Kathy spent almost 2 hours at the clinic. Kelly ran to the medical center after her mother, but could not explain to the doctors how the accident happened. The doctor on duty listened to the young woman's rambling speech for a long time, and then with irritation said, "Mommy, are you obliged to provide your child with a safe environment? Probably heard from your mom that small children need an eye." "Yes, I have." Kelly shifted her gaze to her mother and grudgingly muttered, "And how can you keep an eye on him if he is like an electrician running around and just for a second turned away?" And he grabbed the kettle. Very often seconds decide a person's life. Try not to let anything like this happen in the future. The doctor gave them a whole list of recommendations. Kelly studied the list for a long time, and then with a wry grin said, "Well, now I'll have to go to the dressings every day." The young woman was about to say something else, but the dam of maternal patience broke. Right in the corridor of the polyclinic, Kathy told her daughter everything she thinks about her and her son-in-law. "You think you've made a lot of money, leading an idle life, comfortable on my hump. Maybe it's time for you to get on your own 2 feet. I'm not made of iron and concrete. I can't take it. Anyway, get a job. I'm getting fired from the store." Kelly rushed to her mother's house crying mommy tears. "What are you talking about? What kind of job when your grandson needs special care?" Kathy was forced to recognize her daughter's rightness. She clung tighter to her, the baby in her arms, and she said in a peaceful tone of voice, "Okay, we'll figure something out. Maybe Clara can help again." Kelly looked at her mother gratefully. "Mommy, you're the best, aren't you? If it weren't for you, Tony and I would be lost." There was so much anguish on her daughter's face, and her voice sounded so sincere that Kathy mentally reproached herself for being cruel and callous. Rocking Robert in her arms, she wondered who they could ask for help but their mother. "As long as I have strength, I'll help." I feel in the play the woman didn't remember that her son-in-law had both father and mother alive. But Tony's parents did not really burden themselves with taking care of their son and his family. They lived in their own pleasure and every year to improve their health at resorts. Kathy did not leave her grandson, although the burns were superficial and the boy was in severe pain. So mothers and grandmothers took turns carrying him in their arms. Caring for her grandchildren put the problem of work on the back burner for a while. But Grandma realized that day X was inexorably approaching. She once again tried to talk to her daughter and son-in-law, but Kelly cleverly dodged a serious conversation. And the son-in-law said to Kathy, "You're always badgering me for a piece of bread. And I, by the way, also contribute to the welfare of the family. It's just that I'm going through some temporary difficulties. So I ask you not to artificially inflame the situation and do not pressurize me." She could still forgive her daughter some liberties, but her son-in-law's insolence made her furious. "Tony, I'm not a horse to carry you all. You're a man. Aren't you ashamed to sit on my neck?" My son-in-law looked at her strangely and confessed why I should be ashamed. "I am your daughter's lawful husband, and I have every right." At this point, Tony stumbled and, waving his hand, walked out of the kitchen. Kathy felt as if a wall had grown between her and the young parents. She's banging on this partition, wanting to be heard. But the wall is made of rubber, so it absorbs all sounds. The woman looked sadly at her sleeping grandson and whispered, "You'll have to carry your cross alone." Kathy went into the hallway, where a telephone stood on the nightstand. She dialed the familiar combination of numbers, and after a few seconds, she heard her friend's cheerful voice. "Hello. Clara, you're answering like a real telephone." "Kathy, are you there? What are you doing up so late? Need your help? Can I come over?" "Of course you can. You don't have to ask such stupid questions." Kathy decided not to postpone her visit until tomorrow and took her coat off the rack. But there was no way to hide unnoticed because Kelly was attracted by the commotion in the hallway. She peeked her head out through the slightly open door. "Mom's going out for the night. I'm going for a walk." "Oh, come on. Who's gonna watch the shot?" "You will. You're the mother." Kelly's drowsiness instantly disappeared from her face, and she stared at her mother. The door slammed loudly, and the woman sighed and walked down to the first floor. There was a special atmosphere in Clara's small apartment. Kathy always felt cozy here. She used to stay overnight at her friend's house, but after the birth, she couldn't afford such freedom. Probably for this reason, the meeting with her friend became so dear to Clara's heart. Fussed in the small kitchen. She ran from the stove to the table, saying, "Be patient, my friend. I'll be ready in a minute." An artist shared this recipe with me. I just don't remember her last name. Kathy grinned, not thinking that in the paid toilet visitors, in addition to the main occupation, still share their culinary experience. The hostess shook her head disapprovingly. "And all you want to do is tease me." The guests hastened to correct the mistake. "Don't take offense, I'm being kind. Especially now I am in such a position that frankly envy you." The mistress of the small buckskin squatted on the edge of the stools. "Kathy, come on, spit it out. What's up with you? Did you have a beef with the shopkeeper? I thought you and her were on good terms." "Yeah, Wendy and I are on good terms, but you know how accidents happen when you don't expect them." There was a suspicious aroma coming from the stove, and Clara rushed off to save her signature dish. "Oh, my pancakes almost burned." The woman deftly removed from the frying pan, ruddy, round, and put a plate with fragrant pastries in front of the guest. "Let's treat," because on an empty stomach conversation turns out to be boring. The trouble with you, Kathy, is that you don't think of yourself in the least. Hence the unfortunate result. Clara took a jar of jam out of the fridge. It's an accompaniment to the pancakes. The guests ate with appetite. The hostess looked at her thoughtfully. "Kathy, your life has finally got to you. Soon you'll be dragging your feet. I can't look at you without tears. Your head's a mess. Your hands are all wrinkled. I'm not even talking about your face, which has forgotten how to take care of itself. A few more years of this stressful life, and you turn into an old woman," guessed and philosophically remarked. "I guess that's my fate." "You know, Clara, lately I've been thinking more and more about the meaning of my life, and I've realized that it's useless to try to avoid what's going to happen." Clara was indignant to hear you say that you can put on white slippers and go to the coffin. A wise man said that a man lives as long as he resists hardship. Clara, you have no idea how much I resist. But just when I've recovered a little from one adversity, another one strikes from around the corner. "Thank you, my friend, for the treats. It was delicious." The guest with the plate headed for the sink, but Clara stopped her. "Sit down. Leave that stupid plate. I'll help you. Spit it out. What's your problem? I'll be out of work soon." The owner is giving her store to her son, and his plan is not to keep the old staff. "Anyway, I've only got a month to find a new place. Kathy, get your dependents moving. How much longer are they gonna sit on your ass? I've tried talking to Kelly and my son-in-law, but it's all for nothing." Clara, in a fit of emotion, slammed her fist down on the table. "No good. You gave him an ultimatum to go self-sufficient in a month." Again followed by a heavy sigh of the friend. "I've been thinking about it for a long time, but now is not the best time for radical action. Robert was hovering his arm 3 days ago. It was such a shock to everyone. Kelly's still reeling. Yeah, your daughter's acting out. She'll do anything for a sweet life at someone else's expense. The guest made a pleading request. Don't swear. You're right about everything. I can't make my own terms with him now. As soon as Robert recovers, I'll tell you everything. Just help me with my work. You get all kinds of people turning over in a day. Maybe you'll hear something useful. Kathy stroked her friend's hand, and she was still pleading. She looked her in the eye. Clara was a sensitive person, and he was touched. Okay, we'll figure something out. I won't promise, but I'll do my best. What kind of job would you prefer? I don't care at my age. I don't have to choose. You know how people look at us askew. The main thing is to have a little extra income. The friends parted well past midnight. Clara urged her guest to stay, but Kathy was worried about Clara's grandson. And I'd love to spend the night, but I'm afraid something else will happen to my little bugger while I'm away. Well, run along. As soon as something clears up, I'll be at your window. And I want you to tell your friend that you're writing yourself up early. We're gonna have a fight on our hands. It took Clara exactly 2 days to resolve the issue of her friend's employment. She called Kathy before lunch and cheerfully announced, I have good news for you, but I'll tell you the details when I meet you. After work, you stopped by my place at the bus station. Nothing in confidence there either. Maybe it would be better to go home. Clara laughed. Are you embarrassed by my place of work? Remember, my dear, a lot of vital issues are decided not in high offices, but in inappropriate places like the restroom. By the way, my place is perfectly clean, and I have no trouble drinking tea and having lunch there. Anyway, I'm waiting for you. Kathy barely waited until the end of the working day and hurried to meet her friend. Clara did not torment her friend, and after the words of greeting, she immediately outlined the essence of the case. Yesterday, I had already cast a fishing rod. I have an acquaintance. She works at the labor exchange. She has all the lists of vacancies in the city. She told me that the office of a construction company urgently needs cleaners. It's been empty for a while because the director was too picky. He's having a real casting call, and it's for a cleaning lady. I wonder how he selects accountants, drivers, and other staff. Clara didn't immediately notice the change in her friend's expression, but when she noticed how white Kathy's face had turned, Kathy rushed over to her. Rejoice, what's the matter with you? My heart's racing. Why don't you stock up on some Cordial? No, it'll pass, although it's not much on Cava. Clara had everything on hand and quickly pulled out her first aid kit from her desk drawer. She said, well, you're a piece of work. You scared me. Wendy drank the medicine and returned the glass to its place. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just that my Kevin, my late husband, worked in this very formation. Clara grimaced and covered his mouth with the palm of his hand. Forgiven, Duja. I couldn't even think about it. We'll call it a night then. You shouldn't be in this office. Clara, wait. I don't have a choice. Soon the term my mistress gave me will expire. I'll be left with nothing. And I heard that after that incident, some oligarch bought this very apartment building with all its guts. Maybe I'm wrong, and there's another firm with the same name. No, that's right. A friend of mine told me the same story. The current owner of the company is one Horford. Does that name mean anything to you? Kathy thought for a moment, then shook her head no. No, it's the first time I've heard it. If you want, I'll find out the details. Don't, Clara. I'm stressing you out enough with my problems as it is. You find this office yourself and find out everything on the spot. Thank you for your help. You really are a true friend, and I'm very lucky to have such a lifesaver. The night city slept soundly, and Kathy found the deserted streets and thought about her fate. Though she felt a little better after the conversation, but somewhere very deep under her heart there was a thin thread of anxiety. No, she was not afraid for herself. Most of all, loving mother and grandmother worried about the future of her daughter and grandson. She mentally reproached herself. Kelly is not at all adapted to independent life, and that's my fault. I was always busy at work and didn't give enough time to my child. The inner voice immediately objected. You had no other choice, Kathy, and stop beating yourself up. She tried not to make any noise in the hallway, but Kelly crawled out of her bedroom as soon as her mother crossed the threshold of the apartment. She whispered reproachfully, "Showing up, not forgotten. The child was loudly capering all evening, waiting for you." "It's nothing, daughter. I'll catch up tomorrow. I'm out for a reason. I'm still working." Kelly made a vague mooing sound and disappeared behind the bedroom door. Kathy tiptoed into her room. She couldn't sleep, tired though she was, because her memory kept jogging her memory of images from the past. Has life not spoiled her daughter with joys? But troubles fell on her from early childhood. She was the eldest in the family, and after her father left her for another woman, all the cares of her two younger brothers and sister fell on her fragile shoulders. To feed her children, her mother worked 2 jobs and went to the coven on weekends. She was a painter, plasterer. Those are always in demand. Camille often told her eldest daughter, "I'm an example, and go and study to be a painter. You'll always have a piece of bread." But her daughter had other plans for the future. She wanted to enter the library technical school. True, she dared not share her intentions with her mother because she had a very tough character. Neighbors and acquaintances about her said about her thigh iron nerves, steel stamina. She is a man in a woman's guise. Indeed, for many years Camille steadfastly endured all the difficulties of everyday life, but broke down when the most terrible for any mother grief fell on her with the loss of a child. No, Sam, the youngest in the family, did not die of an incurable disease. He literally disappeared when he and his mother were returning from the city on the electric train. At that time, they lived in a working-class village, which was almost close to the city limits. At that time, housing construction was going at an incredible pace, and the parents hoped to get an apartment in a new building. But my father never waited for this event and left for another family. So they got an apartment without him and his younger brother. But while the village was a separate settlement in the register, the most popular mode of transportation among its residents was the electric train. On that fateful day, Camille went with her young son to the clinic to have the child immunized. For the sake of this preventive measure, she had to take time off work, and the woman was very sad about it. She had her own clinic nearby. No, it's in the way. They tore it down before its time. Now you have to travel to the city every month to get a certificate for kindergarten or to get vaccinated. And that's a full day's work for which no one will pay me. Kathy remembers offering to help her mother. "Mom, let me take Sam to the doctor. It's no trouble at all." Camille immediately rejected the offer. How can you be trusted with something so important? Will you open your mouth and lose the child, or will you get lost yourself? The woman, as if on her own misfortune. After visiting the children's clinic, she and her child again hurried to the train to get home early for running, and the woman forgot about everything in the world. When they got into the carriage, she urgently needed to excommunicate for a small need. She asked her neighbor to keep an eye on her. "Please take care of mine. I'll take care of it in a jiffy." The old woman gladly responded to the request. "Don't worry, I'll look after the boy." But when Camille returned, neither her son nor the woman was there. The train had made a brief stop during her absence, but the distraught mother didn't want to think that the stranger and her child had gotten off at that station. The baby was immediately reported missing to the police station. Sam was searched first in all the neighboring villages. Then the search expanded. Weeks and months were searched, and the boy was never found. This tragedy was the first terrible loss. Camille became very withdrawn in her life after the incident. She blamed herself for everything. The unfortunate woman voluntarily abandoned the usual life guidelines and joined one community. Very soon, the mother completely withdrew from the life of her children and subsequently quit her job. The eldest daughter tried to bring her parents back to life, but she responded to any remarks with aggression. "We are all sinners on this earth. And you are a sinner too. The only way to atone for your sin is to pray." Camille prayed day and night. She often left home for days at a time, and once she disappeared for a month. When her mother finally came home, Kathy realized that she was mentally ill. The woman was placed in a specialized institution. Periodically, there were improvements, and she was released home. But the lucid intervals were also short for the eldest daughter. They had to watch every step of the sick mother. It was good that by that time, they had already received a large apartment in a new neighborhood of the city. Workers' settlement, in which the childhood years and youth flew by. Kathy ceased to exist. The younger brother and sister did not want to stay in the family nest and moved away in different directions. Soon Camille herself also passed away. She died at home on a quiet fall morning. Kathy made breakfast before work, as usual, and went to her mother's room. "Wake up, Camille. It's time for breakfast." But the call went unanswered. Her mother was lying on her side, covered head to toe with a blanket. Kathy rushed to the bedside, foreboding trouble. She tugged the blanket not yet fully, realizing the depth that befell her grief. She cried out, "Mommy, wake up. You're asleep, aren't you?" Camille's hands were still warm, and her daughter tearfully added to them. Life was slowly leaving the injured woman's body. Kathy didn't want to believe that she no longer had her mom. It was the second irreparable loss in her life. Her brother and sister didn't arrive until the day of the funeral. They stayed together the whole time and whispered about something. But Kathy was not content to watch her relatives. She put a lot of effort into seeing her mom off on her last journey with dignity. Thank you that there are still good people. Former neighbors in the village provided considerable help in organizing the funeral. Someone borrowed money. Someone took upon himself the organization of the funeral. Many kind words were expressed to the orphaned ex-girlfriend. "Kathy, be strong. Time heals all wounds, and this pain will subside. Remember that you are not alone in this world, and contact us at any time. We will help you as much as we can." The girl wanted to hear the same words of support from her closest people, her sister and brother. But they were guests at the funeral ceremony, and did not even deign to buy flowers to lay on Miranda's mother's grave. Kathy's sister lowered her eyes and tried to explain the oversight. "You realize, Kathy, that it's a long trip, and a plane ticket isn't cheap. My husband had given me a little money, so I had enough for the trip." Miranda was 7 years younger than her older sister, but she'd already been there twice. Married. The first marriage had not lasted a year, and she had hurriedly separated from her student husband, who was not capable of meeting the minimum set of needs of a young wife. Just a few months after the divorce, Miranda married her boss. She proudly told her older sister that the man had left his wife and child for her. Kathy was horrified by this admission. "Miranda, you must know that you can never build your own personal happiness on someone else's misfortune. Little sister is not happy, snicker, and you go the same way. That saying makes me sick. The women at work gossip all the time. Now my big sister's telling me what to do. You took the father away from the child. Doesn't that make you uncomfortable?" Miranda looked arrogantly at Kathy. "Imagine, I'm not embarrassed. I'm going to have my husband's baby with a bunch of little ones. And you if I want you to. And anyway, I think you're just jealous of me, sister. You're about to turn 30 and you're still single." This conversation took place shortly before her mother died. Kathy had the desire to hit her little sister on the knee of the pilot, but she held back. Then the resentment against Miranda passed, and she was genuinely glad that she had come to the funeral. But when her sister confided to her about the lack of money, Kathy didn't hesitate to reach into her purse. She scooped out the rest of the money and handed it to her sister Miranda. "I've already spent a lot, there's not much left. I think you'll have enough for the return trip." The sister counted the money and didn't even thank Kathy. After the wake, when everyone had gone, Miranda started from afar. "Sis, you must forgive Frank and me for having this unpleasant conversation at a time like this. But we need to finalize some details before we leave." Kathy was doing the dishes at that moment. Her younger sister's words made her wary. She turned off the water and looked at her brother, who sat at the table with a blank expression. It was hard to guess what the conversation would be about, but Kathy was deliberately delaying the moment. "We haven't seen each other much lately. My mother often thought of you. She was waiting for you to come home, wasn't she? Miranda, Kathy, your story sounds like fiction. Our mommy was in and out of the hospital. How could she remember anything or anyone? By the way, my husband still doesn't know that my mother has had problems. I'm afraid if he finds out, he'll put me out on the street. He's turned and hereditary. Frank still remained silent. Kathy found her sister's statement sacrilegious. Miranda, how can you say that? You know very well that Mom's problems started after Sam disappeared. Sister waved her hand carelessly. Oh, when was that? Those are all excuses from early childhood. I remember our mom was often out of sorts, or an idea before she could open her mouth. Frank finally spoke up from his corner. Guys, stop fighting. Let's discuss the main issue quickly and get on with it. Kathy asked with a grin if you've come to divide the inheritance. I can't wait. Miranda glared angrily, and Frank blushed to the top of his head. Kathy, you can think what you want. That's your right. But it's a question that begs to be asked. After all, the apartment was for everyone, and Miranda and I have every right to our share. And how much do you want for your parts? If I understand you correctly, you don't intend to live here. Miranda nodded affirmatively and said the amount. And then she added, if you don't have the money, can you sell the apartment or divide everything equally? Or is the idea not without mockery? Asked you, sis, do not throw up. You just show up like that and demand your share. When my mother's body was still warm, you didn't lift a finger to help me. Frank had already recovered and spoke in a mentor's tone. But there is a law, and it stipulates I know the law as well as you do. In 6 months, we'll settle this matter. Right now, he's failing both. The brother and sister were bewildered by such an impetus. They stomped around in the kitchen for a while. And then we left for the train station without saying goodbye to Big Sister. After they left, Kathy wondered for a long time what to do. But a coworker at the library advised Kathy, don't go after your relatives. I advise you to find a good lawyer and take the matter of inheritance to court. Be sure to attach all statements from the hospital where your mother was treated. With the competent conduct of the case, we'll be able to prove that your brother and sister are unworthy heirs. Of course, her conscience wouldn't allow her to take such a step. She had already begun to look for favorable options for sale or exchange when she met Kevin. The young foreman came to the library and asked embarrassedly, please help me. I'm at a complete loss. Kathy was just tidying up the card catalog, and the persistent visitor irritated her. And how can I help you? You see, we have a seminar at work next week, and the boss ordered me to prepare the text of the speech. I've never participated in such events, so I don't even know where to start. I'm not a public person at all, and I get lost in public. The boy suddenly smiled, and 2 dimples appeared on his cheeks. Kathy felt ashamed of her unfriendly tone, and she said in a different way, the only thing I can offer you is newspapers. Every industry has its own publications where you can get useful information. Of course, I am not an expert in the field of construction, although my mother has worked in construction all her life. The visitors immediately became animated, so word by word, and a rapport was established between the young people that day. Kathy first learned about the existence of a construction organization called Gill Construction. Her new acquaintance, Kevin, spoke passionately about his work. The young man was a hereditary builder and was proud to carry on his father's and grandfather's work, but he had obvious pronunciation problems, so Kathy helped him to compose his speech. Kevin never got the chance to demonstrate his oratorical skills. The boss took the prepared texts from him and patted him on the shoulder. Thank you, Kevin. I will not forget your help. The young foreman was shocked and intended to assert his rights. Jacob, that's not fair. I spent half the day in the library. I even had a girl helping me write my speech. The warden clapped the guys on the shoulder again, but harder. See what a good assignment I gave you. So you should thank me again. I take the text for myself, and I wish you to continue your pleasant acquaintance with the girl. And don't take offense at me. Your moment of glory is still ahead of you because you're young. My time is strictly limited. Kevin had no choice but to accept that. He didn't want to argue with his superiors because these were troubled times, and those who expressed dissatisfaction could be quickly put out on the street. For this reason, most of the workers kept quiet, hiding shortcomings and even serious violations of standards. Construction, of course, also kept wages, which at all times construction workers had much higher salaries than employees and ordinary laborers. Kevin did not tell his future wife about his professional problems, but Kathy immediately felt that jeans were her destiny. They met for only a month and a half and then filed an application. The girl immediately warned her fiancé Kevin, "You know that I recently buried my mother. So we shouldn't have a noisy wedding, and I don't want people judging me. About that, don't worry about it. I don't like unnecessary entourage myself. After all, marital happiness doesn't depend on how much you spend on your wedding." Before the wedding, Kevin moved into his future wife's apartment. Kathy had forgotten all about her sister and brother, but Miranda remembered her inheritance and was not going to give up her share to anyone. She showed up just on the day when the newlyweds put their signatures in the registry office and decided to celebrate an important event in their lives with a small feast for two. And at the most crucial moment, the bell rang. Kathy rushed into the hallway. It was probably the neighbor who wanted to congratulate us, but it was Miranda. The sister was wearing an expensive sheepskin coat and a mink hat with fur trim. Without waiting for an invitation, she walked into the kitchen. "Oh, you have a sister here. There's a party going on. What's the occasion?" The last thing Kathy wanted to see on this special day was her sister. She answered her very dryly. "It's none of your business. Why are you here?" Miranda whistled. "Oh, how did you speak?" She walked to the table and poured herself some champagne. Miranda didn't like the drink, and she grimaced. "How can you drink such a thing?" But the low-quality drink still worked on the young woman, and after a small amount of his drink, the younger sister noticed that there was another person present in the kitchen besides herself and Kathy. She pointed a strong finger at Kevin with her manicured nails. "What's that frame?" "Nothing. That's the kind of guy you're with." Kathy wasn't going to stand for her sister's insolence. She took the bottle from her guest and said loudly, "That's my husband. Couldn't you have told me you were coming?" Miranda stared at Gino again. "Sis, is your husband aware that this apartment is not your sole property?" Kevin decided to teach her relative a lesson in politeness. "I hate to remind you, Miranda, that discussing a man in his own presence is highly unbecoming. Such behavior is considered mauvais." Miranda grimaced. "What's what? You've picked up a few words somewhere, you fancy words. I'll tell you simply, I won't give you mine, and I don't care what you think of me." Kathy noticed her sister's belligerent attitude. She had already prepared for a scandal, but Kevin, unexpectedly for the sisters, said, "I think we'll shake up the apartment issue. I have the money, and you, Miranda, will get your share, so to speak, in cash equivalent. Right tomorrow, you and I will go to the notary." Miranda shrugged his shoulders. "Why would you give me the money and that's it? No, it doesn't work that way. At the notary, we'll draw up a document in full form and you'll sign it." "I don't want to do that." Kevin scrutinized his wife's sister. "We could still go to court to settle the inheritance issue. But I don't think you'd like that option any better." Miranda was puzzled. "Can't we do without all this red tape? Just give me what's mine. I'll leave you alone." Kathy decided to put a stop to this unpleasant conversation. "No, sister, it's not gonna work your way. A month or a year from now, you'll get the idea that the partition was unfair, and you'll start harassing us." There was nothing to say against such an argument. She stretched out disappointedly. "Okay, let it be according to you. Am I allowed to spend the night at your place? What kind of stupid questions are these? Of course you can stay. You can stay here until you get bored." The sister's answer won over Miranda's intransigence. She didn't refuse dinner and tea and cake. The next day in the morning, the sisters went to the notary. But it turned out that for the final solution of the inheritance issue, the personal presence of the younger brother was still needed. So Miranda left with nothing. On the day appointed by the lawyers, the sister came again with Frank. The brother immediately abandoned his claim to his part in favor of the older sister. He explained his action in a way that confused me. It was kind of embarrassing at the time. "I want to apologize to you, sister. You took care of us instead of Mom. I acted like an asshole. I'm sorry." Kathy was touched by her brother's confession. Miranda, on the other hand, appreciated his act as a personal revenge, not shying away from anyone. She lashed out at the guy, sitting there, who was damaged as a child. "He still is. Who put you up to this? You just came right out and said it. I mean, you could have given up your part of it in my favor, and I'll never forgive you for that." So sister and brother parted as enemies. But after all the paperwork, the problem with the apartment was finally solved. Later, the spouses privatized the housing, so that from now on there were no collisions. Family life of the Wendy couple quietly flowed, overcoming domestic troubles. Money was enough not only for a trouble-free life, but also for an annual vacation. Kevin was appointed site manager and began to think about his own business. He once shared his plans with his wife, Kathy. "I haven't told anyone yet. You're the first one I've had enough of depending on others. I want to work for myself." The young woman always supported her husband. Then she felt a strange uneasiness. "Kevin, well, you know better than I do that the construction business is the most difficult and the most dangerous direction." Her husband laughed. "Have you been reading detective stories in your library? Many of my acquaintances have successfully mastered this business. One of my fellow students at the Institute opened an office abroad. The main thing is to do everything within the law, and you won't get in trouble." Kevin, charged with new ideas, and began to appear at home only closer to night. Kathy did not work for fate and told her little daughter, "Our daddy will soon earn even more money, and we will all go on a trip together." The couple had long dreamed of visiting the most interesting places on the planet, and the nearest vacation wanted to spend in Thailand. But these plans were not destined to come true. One frosty December day, a disaster happened. Kevin and several other workers were crushed at the construction site by a concrete slab that burst from the crane. His wife was only informed of the accident in the morning. Kathy stayed up all night waiting for her husband. When the phone rang, she immediately realized that a new disaster had come to their home. The management of the construction organization tried to cover up the accident and blame it on the victims themselves. The director of the company losses from excitement and said so to the widow of the site manager, "This is your husband's direct fault. He is responsible for the technical malfunction of the crane and other equipment." Kathy quietly corrected the manlay. The director blushed even more. What did you women say?" Just as quietly replied and just corrected us. "You used the present tense of dead should be spoken in the past. My husband is no longer responsible for the mess in your office." The director was speechless. She left the office, closing the door carefully behind her. The tragedy took the lives of 4 young, healthy men. Only 2 survived, but they were handicapped for life. The unfortunate widows, who lost their breadwinners in one day, expected to receive at least some compensation, but the management not only refused the women, but also treated them rudely. After a short conversation with the director of the enterprise, Kathy experienced horror stories. She ran away from the office, where she was smeared with mud and saw nothing in front of her. There was only one desire: to get away from this place and forget about the existence of this system forever. In the mind of a young woman, and confused everything, and she saw nothing in front of her. Kathy almost ran to the middle of the roadway when someone's tenacious hand grabbed her, and a woman's voice yelled right in her ear foolishly, "Where are you going? Have you had enough of life?" This shout had the effect of a bucket of ice water. Kathy came to her senses and was shaken with terror. She looked gratefully at the woman who had saved her from imminent death. Since that memorable day, they had hardly been apart. Clara had also had her own tragedy in life. Her husband died just a month after the wedding. The woman never told anyone the details of that accident. Even Kathy, she did not initiate wisely, noting, "Kathy, you have your own troubles to deal with. Why do you need more of my problems? Trust me, it's over." It's gone. I may regret some things now, but it's too late to fix them. It was only years later that Kathy realized that her friend regretted not letting herself be happy. As Clara herself later admitted, she was afraid of repeating the misfortune and refused all the men who offered her hand and heart. By doing so, she condemned herself to loneliness. Because then, when she realized her mistake, men stopped paying attention to her. That day at the end of May was a special hot sun. It had been hurting since early morning, and Kathy felt considerable discomfort not only from the unaccustomed heat, but also from excessive excitement. To gather her thoughts, she decided to catch her breath a little. Not far from the entrance to the building where the company's main office was located, a formation lived. She spotted the free benches. The first few minutes and her heart was pounding frantically. But then she calmed down a little. Almost 20 years had passed since the tragic death of her husband, and Kathy hardly recognized the building, the memory of which for many years inspired her with panic horror. But now she was calmly looking at the object and did not feel unpleasant emotions. Both the appearance of the building and the surrounding landscape had changed. Kathy's mind flashed, invigorated by someone else's thoughts. You're just going to sit there like that. Now that you're here, go on, do it. Just in case, the woman took out powder from her purse and looked critically at her reflection in a small mirror. Nothing for a cleaning lady. After the conversation with Clara, Kathy began to pay more attention to her appearance, especially the words that the owner of the company, that is known to her Orford with a special bias, selects personnel, but met applicants for an empty vacancy. The assistant chief is already not old, but very polite lady. She offered the visitor a table and briefly introduced herself as Emily. I won't tell you my last name, because you won't remember it anyway. I'm the acting secretary here, and I'm also in charge of human resources. The chief is temporarily absent, so I handle all matters on his behalf. Kathy was confused and only smiled meaningfully at Emily. You know, I sometimes surprise myself, but modern life is such that if you fall behind a little, you fall out of it forever. I really wouldn't want that to happen. Wendy and spontaneously burst out. I, too, am pleased to have found a rapport from the first minutes. I hope that our acquaintance with you will continue in a similarly positive way. So I am listening to you very carefully. Mrs. Kathy introduced herself and explained the purpose of her visit. Emily listened attentively, but for some reason she asked if you were a teacher by training. No, I graduated from library school, but that was a long time ago. Does my former profession matter? The assistant smiled again. Don't worry, Kathy, your speech is very good. That's why I asked you such an unconventional question. I am a former teacher of Russian language and literature, but at the end of the 90s I was left behind. For a long time I was looking for my new place in the sun. But the world is not without good people. The father of our chief helped me to get out of a disastrous situation. And now I can't imagine my life without this job. Kathy was surprised by such frankness and realized that her interlocutor was expecting the same step from her. She told Emily about the main points from her biography and finally added, I just can't afford to relax now. A little later, I may want to exercise my rights and relax like normal retirees. But I can't right now. Emily rolled her eyes theatrically. Oh, our children. We are ready to do anything for their well-being. I have almost the same situation, but the difference is that I do not let mine sit on my neck. I culturally them from the bundle of shaft, that is, from the force, from myself. I have a daughter and a son who are 1.5-year-olds. They live independently and manage quite well, which I am very happy about. But I am always aware of them so that I can give them my powerful shoulder in time. Emily was of frail build, so expressive epithets did not match her appearance. She laughed ringingly at her own jokes. Perhaps I'm too distracted, but in this office among rude men sometimes can be unbearably boring and want to talk to someone. This nice woman's face immediately became serious. So let's get down to business. If I understand you correctly, you don't mind working for us as a cleaner. Kathy stretched out slim, not much need for work. At my old place, the landlady already gave me a notice of termination. The head of HR interrupted the woman. I'm sorry, where did you work? At the home improvement store. I haven't paid my paycheck yet. Emily's face lit up with a smile again. I know Wendy well. You might even say we're buddies. By the way, her son Andrew was once in my class. He was such a smart boy. He wrote beautiful essays. Kathy realized she'd better keep her mistress's problems to herself. She and the assistant boss chatted a little more on distracted topics. Then Emily handed her a blank sheet of paper and a pen. So Kathy, write your statement. Try to get a fresh start. Wendy quickly accomplished the task at hand. Emily listed her cleaning duties. The main requirement was to stay out of the boss's sight. To fulfill this condition, you will have to report to work early in the morning. That is, before the office staff has taken their desks. But you can postpone cleaning and at a later time, when everyone goes home. Whatever suits you best, but I have to have a clear schedule on my desk. We have a very strict discipline here. Kathy couldn't believe her luck yet. She agreed with everything she said to the assistant manager of the company. Emily escorted the new employee to the elevator. Yes, I almost forgot to tell you that our Peter is a terribly pedantic man. God forbid, if anything or paper will be in the wrong place where it should be, as you will have to restore order, and in his office be sure to take into account this moment. I like you very much. I'm rarely wrong about people. Kathy returned home in high spirits. She felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders, and that made it easier to breathe. The summer had not escaped her daughter's attentive gaze, and she anxiously asked Mom, "What's wrong with you? You don't look like yourself today." Kathy replaced the stylish heeled shoes with indoor slippers. "Daughter, from today, I'm starting my life with a clean slate." Kelly moved closer to her mother and sniffed the air with her nose. "You didn't by any chance. Just 100 grams for courage. Daughter, you know I don't drink at all, much less in the morning. It's just that I met a wonderful woman today, and I'm getting a job." Kelly squealed with joy. "Mommy, you're great." Kathy gently released herself from her daughter's embrace. "Your excitement is premature, because from this day forward, our lives are going to be taken to another level, like a computer game." "You got it, Kelly. We've been stuck at the beginning for a long time, so it's time to move up." "You mean raise our standard of living? What does that mean?" "Does that mean, Kelly, that everyone has to take responsibility for themselves? You're 26, thank God. That's the age of maturity. Robert's a pretty independent kid too, and his wounds are practically healed. Mom, you know." Kathy forcefully drew her daughter to her. "And what did you poke her on the tip of her nose with?" "I know all about it, my joy, but the grace period is over and I have no more bonuses in my stash." "You got a husband. Let him move around a bit. After all, your Tony has parents, and they're not poor. Let them give you a little help. I'm not the only one who's torn." There were sobs. These sounds meant that the daughter used her most effective tool to influence her mother. Mommy, that's so cruel of you. We need at least a little time to prepare." The positive mood as ethereal substances began to fade away, and it was replaced by a familiar tiredness. Kathy, by an effort of will, drove the gloomy gloom away from herself and rather sharply said to Kelly, "Stop whining. You and Tony have had 6 whole years to prepare, but you've been doing other things. You thought I was going to drag this out forever. No, my darlings. I think you're familiar with the phrase, no translation necessary. But for purely human reasons, I'll give you exactly 1 month." There was horror in her daughter's eyes. Kathy hesitated for a moment, but then Emily's words came to mind, and the mother said rather harshly to her daughter Kelly, "Don't make a scene. You're not doing so well today. I'm gonna give you some feminine advice. Kick your husband's ass, or find another life partner. A normal man should provide for his family, not live off me. Why are you so upset? I'm not chasing you to the street. Live, but pay for all the pleasures yourself." Kathy admired her courage. If she had a tambourine in her hands at the moment, she would have hit it with all her might. Kelly stood still and looked hopefully at her mother. "Mommy, what about Robert?" "Kelly, this is just another attempt at a pet peeve. You're wasting your time because it doesn't work on me anymore. Besides, it's not like I'm giving up my grandmotherly duties. Everything remains in the same place, except for the change in your status from slackers to employed. I've made myself clear, Kelly. I've remained silent. There's nowhere for me to understand." Kathy headed to her room to rest after a busy day. Kelly stood pondering in the middle of the kitchen for a long time. She tried to figure out what her mother's ultimatum would mean. Her thoughts jumbled in a rapid whirl. But at one turn, one thought drifted out of orbit. "Kelly, you have to cook dinner with your mom tonight. Then you have to move Robert's stuff and take him for a walk." God, this is awful. I can't take it. This day was also a turning point for Kelly and her family. In the evening, when Tony was in his usual amorphous state, his spouse made a number of complaints to him. But from all the flow of beautiful and not so beautiful words, the young man realized that Lafa for him ended. For the first time in years of married life, Tony did not sleep at night. He was trying to solve the dilemma of accepting his wife's conditions and go tomorrow to look for a job or find another more cooperative life partner. The second option chronic slackers canceled at once. He realized that to love his wife, perhaps his love is not like everyone else's, but certain loves Kelly and Robert. Doomedly he whispered he'd have to look for work. That was the last living thought. And then Tony fell into a sweet slumber. Summer had slipped by, and the first harbingers of fall were in the air, the smell of white leaves and high humidity. But Kathy didn't notice these changes because her life was back to normal. She quickly settled into her new job, and after a week, she was handing over the morning and evening shifts. Emily approved of this arrangement. "Good for you. You have chosen a rational solution for yourself, and it is convenient for me to coordinate the work of the office." By the way, Peter immediately noticed that his office was cleaner. He even asked me to thank you on his behalf, which I'm happy to do. The first praise hit the woman, and she shared this joy with her friend. Clara remarked reasonably, "See how fortunate I am to have found you a job. But don't get too excited. This Horford is a dark horse. He's a mood man, and there's no telling what will pop into his head tomorrow." The hopeless situation in the house has moved on. How Kathy called her daughter and son-in-law behind her eyes, dropped their window panes. For a couple of weeks, they did not speak to her, expressing their displeasure in this way. But then the game of silence bored them. One evening, her son-in-law met her in the hallway. "Kathy, I want you to know that I'm already working. They promised me a small advance." "Very good, Tony." The woman felt that words of approval were never too much to ask. Let Tony know that she is not his enemy and rejoice in his success. About all the recent events and the seasons, Kathy thought while relaxing in the yard near the playground. Suddenly, she caught herself thinking that lately she has been thinking that youth is also like a warm summer and that it flies by in an instant before you know it. Old age is already on the threshold. The woman tried to switch from these cheerful thoughts to more pleasant thoughts, and the most important stimulus in her present life was her grandson Robert, who together with other kids in the sandbox. At the sight of this happy pictures, the woman felt a burst of energy. She called out loudly to her grandson, "Robert, don't get dirty. You have not forgotten that we were going to go to the park with you." The boy quickly jumped out of the sandbox and at first wanted to wipe his hands on his jeans, but then changed his mind. "Grandma, but my hands are dirty. How can I go to the park like this? Everyone will say I'm from scratch." Kathy reassured the child. "It's fixable. We'll clean it up." She got some wet wipes out of her purse. "Give me your hands. Grandma's doing a good job on you, palm to palm. We don't have to go home for this." The boy's plump lips stretched into a satisfied smile. "No, we better go to the fountain, and we can wash up there. Robert, if everyone starts washing fantasies, hands and feet, then it will be a mess." "How's Daddy at work?" The woman's hand, along with her napkin, froze in midair. Your daddy used to say that. Yeah, and he also said that this job sucks, and he's not a slave on a plantation to bend over backwards for little pay. Kathy decided it was not worth questioning her grandson further, but in her plan, which she had always kept in her mind, she made a point of educating her parents. Robert's parents. The woman thought, can we discuss such matters in front of the child? And then we grab our heads. We wonder where the little ones learned such words. Robert looked at his grandmother expectantly because his hands were still covered with a layer of sand. Kathy looked up. Robert, you've got me all in a tizzy with your fountain. After a thorough hygienic procedure, the grandmother and her grandson went to the park. In this favorite recreation place of the citizens recently underwent a large-scale reconstruction, after which the park began to look even more attractive to saturate the site. The administration decided to restore slides, swings, and a miniature fairy tale city. Older kids could practice their climbing skills on Robert's warehouse or have competitions between scooter boxes or skateboard bandits. Robert had grown up a lively child from an early age, and it was moving types of entertainment that appealed to him. Kathy was not surprised when her grandson dragged her to the far corner of the park. Grandma, let's go there first, and then you can buy me ice cream. Okay, Robert, today I'll fulfill your every wish, but only you don't take a step away from me. The boy was willing to do anything just to gawk at the virtuoso guys who were racing their socks, going up and down with cosmic speed. Robert was not alone in his desire, and a dozen or two spectators of various ages gathered near the low fence. Spurred on with the general interest, the athletes decided to demonstrate the aerobatics to the public. Robert quickly found a fellow hobby boy of about the same age with long windows. The unusual hairstyle made the child look like a little prince or a page of His Majesty. Kathy involuntarily admired the baby and was distracted from reality for a few seconds. And in those seconds, something happened that made all the spectators scatter. Only the boy who looked like a prince stayed where he was, and Robert molds him away. It all happened in a split second. With her side vision, Kathy noticed a young skateboarder flying toward the child. Apparently, the kid miscalculated his speed and flew off the ramp. Of course, Kathy did not know the intricacies of this extreme entertainment. She only understood one thing she didn't know. The boy was in danger, forgetting about his age and sore lower back. The woman pitched her body towards the flying projectile, though the impact was quite strong. Kathy kept herself on her feet. She cradled the crying boy to her, and Robert in a pitiful voice asked, "Grandma, you're in a lot of pain." It didn't come to her at once. What was he asking? As calmly as possible, she answered, "I'm not hurt at all." The grandson, choking with delight, began to tell what he saw from the outside. He was flying so fast. "I'll tell Daddy tonight. You're a real lifeguard, just like in the cartoon." Someone behind me touched Kathy's shoulder. "Woman, you're all right. If it wasn't for you, the boy's head would have been blown off. That's the kind of fun you can only have behind an iron net." The culprit of the accident with his vehicle disappeared behind the trees, and the unknown boy still pressed Sekli and children Sergievna. She asked him, "You came with whom?" Although the first fright passed, the child's voice trembled at his mother. "And where is your mom?" The boy pulled the woman to the side, saying, "She is my mom. She's hanging on the phone again. Grandpa has said how many times that she won't notice how she'll be without a head. But Mom doesn't listen to anyone, not even Grandpa." By the intonation, it was easy to guess that the child is obviously imitating someone. The young woman continued to talk on her cell phone. Only for a moment, she was distracted from the conversation and turned her attention to her son. "Liam, where are you going? I told you to sit next to me." This indifference. The young mother was outraged by Kathy. "Monty, your child was in danger just a few minutes ago, and here you are calmly chatting on the phone." The woman threw a disgruntled, "I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to disconnect. There's a crazy lady on the phone. I'll call you back later." Turning off the cell phone, the mother grabbed the child by the hand and with such force that the baby squealed in pain. But the parent dragged him away. "I'll show you at home how to disobey your mom. I don't need bad aunts telling me what to do. You'll be punished for being smug." Kathy looked after the couple and did not immediately notice that she was holding the Panama she had saved for the child. She shouted, "Mommy, wait, you forgot." The young woman stopped but didn't even take a step towards her. Kathy covered a short distance and gave the mom the child's headpiece. The perpetrator of the incident took advantage of the moment and broke out of the mother's clinging hands. He pulled something brightly colored out of his pocket and held it out to his savior. "Nah, my name is Liam. This is my horse Stam. Grandpa says he brings good luck." Robert tugged his grandmother's hand. "Did you promise to buy me ice cream?" Kathy put the boy's present in his purse. "Robert, how impatient are you? You can't do that." The boy parried, "I'm a little boy. I'm allowed. When I grow up and become like my daddy, then I can't be spoiled. Probably won't be allowed ice cream either." The good mood returned to the old woman, and she reassured her grandson. "You can eat ice cream at any age. I buy some for myself too. But you, Auntie, Uncle, you can't be loud. Don't be silly. Even generals are allowed. Eat ice cream." The boy issued bravura nicknames, rushed to the place where the cold delicacy was sold. Tired of the adventure, having had a lot of impressions, they returned home in the evening. Robert was burning with excitement and immediately told his parents the story of his new friend's rescue by his grandmother. He accompanied his story with gestures and loud noises. Kelly waited for her son to speak and turned to his mother. "Mom, you were bound to make a mark. I'm surprised you haven't gotten your own treatment yet." Kathy lost her back. "It's probably gonna bruise. That thing hit me in the back. Good thing the guy riding it jumped off before the collision." Tony looked at Kathy for a long time and then sarcastically said, "Yes, we still have heroes, our courageous women, ready to catch fire and water and skateboard on the fly." "Well done, Kathy." Her son-in-law applauded her bright speech. She realized that Tony still couldn't calm down, but she didn't have the energy to respond to his jokes. Kathy wanted more than anything to lie down and stretch her legs. She had already settled into bed and was in the mood for sleep, when she suddenly remembered about little Pavlik's present, getting his face everywhere from the bag. The woman awed. It couldn't be. No, it didn't just seem like it. Drowsiness was removed as with a hand, and before the eyes became cloudy, it was as if she'd been caught in a fog. The first thing that came out of the past was a song that sounded like her daughter. Mom used to sing such an unusual lullaby to the younger children. She sat clutching an old toy in the palm of her hand. It seemed to her that time stood still as a black shadow on the windowsill. An unpleasant nausea rolled up to her throat with every breath, and to get rid of this discomfort, the new-feeling woman opened the window. A cold fall wind blew into the studio room, stoking her imagination. Is it just me, or am I really going crazy? Kathy remembered her mother, who had passed away so early in life, and whispered how this toy could have gotten to the boy. Could it be a replica? She began to examine the wooden whistling cradle made in the shape of a cognac again with partiality. No, it's not a copy. It's the same icon that... The wheel of time turned abruptly, and Kathy was back in the working village where her childhood had flown by. The main attraction of their place was her grandfather. No one knew the surname and patronymic of this elderly man, but there were legends about his heroic past. Some even claimed that Trevor was the commander of a guerrilla unit and was awarded the Hero's Star. However, no one ever saw this award either. The old man was strange and led a secluded life. He went for a walk every day in company with a pink piglet. The pig had a dog leash around his neck, and Trevor gave him commands to represent the people, standing firm as you beg for food for now. Now, my boy, say hello to everyone. Surprisingly, the piggy obeyed all his master's commands. Trevor would only put on such a show on big occasions. After demonstrating the skills of his pet, he went to the beer bar, where he disappeared until closing time. Often drunk, the old man organized a small debauch, But the guards did not take the old man away. They felt sorry for him. It's all right. Let the old man get a little rowdy. He deserves it. He's not hurting anyone. Trevor was very kind and generous indeed. When he got his pension, he'd buy candy and give it to the kids. But another oddity of the old man was his unusual craft. He made toys out of all kinds of trash and gave them to children. Kathy and her friends often visited Grandpa Trevor. In those years, it was a very popular movement, and school children helped lonely people with household chores. One day, the teacher asked their girls, "You know, Grandfather Trevor," schoolgirls amicably reported, "We know. And do you know that this man has awards? Because during the war years committed many feats." Again, a positive answer followed, and the teacher got to the point. "This man is very lonely. And you, as young Timorovsky, can help him." The girls did not let the teacher finish and, interrupting each other, began to offer a variety of options for help. Some promised to clean the floors in Trevor's house, and others wanted to cook cage soup for the hero. The teacher approved of both options, but warned her ward's girls only no amateurism. If Grandpa refuses to accept today, arrange for another day. Ask him when it's convenient for him. The whole team of girls went to visit the hero and his trained pigs. Trevor met the Rainbow Brigade of Teamsters and invited everyone into the house in two. The girls crossed the threshold of the modest dwelling, as froze with amazement. There were toys everywhere, brightly colored, unusually cheerful. They stood in a neat row on the shelves of the bookcase, and some mingled with the ceiling and beams on a rope. Schoolgirls instantly forgot about the purpose of their visit and began to enthusiastically consider the toys. Of course, the guests flooded the master with questions. "Grandpa Trevor, what do you make these toys from?" The old man was embarrassed by the attention, so he answered briefly, "From different wood. There is a lot of junk in the forest. I pick it up. The main thing in this case to see logs, cones, something else. Here, for example, this cockerel, I built a hedge, which was lying in the ravine behind the old stable of this dog. I made it out of twigs." That's the first excursion. It was memorable for Kathy for the rest of her life. Impressions overwhelmed her, and she decided to tell her mother about the visit to the hero. But Camille yelled at her daughter not to go there again. "Grandpa's been going crazy for a long time. Will he get in his head again? And your teacher has no sense at all. How can you send your kids to her normal grandfather?" "I'll get to the school principal." She didn't say what would happen to the teacher when she went to the principal, but Kathy knew that mother doesn't throw words in the wind. She was very afraid that her parent would fulfill her promise one day. But Camille was busy with household chores. Her little brother Sam had just been born, and a month later, the father left home. Women silently bore this grief because she had to raise 4 people alone, so she didn't care about their tenderness. If the little ones got something from their mother, Kathy mostly received pokes and slaps. In order not to make her mother angry, she decided not to talk about her grandfather anymore, but she would secretly go to Kathy's house. I really wanted to learn how to make exactly the same toys. Of all the girls, she was the most decent student. Trevor taught her to make a cockerel and a hen, but Kathy kept her eye on a little horse that she could whistle at. The old man made this toy in front of her and thought you rolled it on a hole. That's what fun it turned out to be. Maybe I should give it to the police department boys. They don't have enough whistles. "Grandpa Trevor, would you please give me a horse? I have a little brother. I didn't get him anything. There's plenty of toys at the store. You can buy anything you want, a car, a whole railroad. We don't have money for toys. Daddy left us, and Mommy has to work hard to feed 4 mouths. I even went to school in my old uniform this year, and everyone laughs at me. What's the trouble?" "All right, Kathy Beria will take the schoolboy for his Sam. Just make sure the little one doesn't inadvertently swallow the toy." The girl pressed the gift to her chest and ran home. Younger brother Homemade Toys immediately liked it. Sam squeaked with delight and even tried a wooden skate on a tooth. Only Camille did not share the joy of children. Her face was darker than a cloud, and she looked menacingly at her daughter. "You didn't listen to me after all. What are you standing there for?" Kathy did not make excuses, but boldly looked her mother straight in the eyes. "He's good, and everything they say about him is a lie." Suddenly, the mother laughed. "You're such a protector. Okay, tomorrow you'll go to your grandfather's house. Take him some pie. I'll bake it today." She was surprised. Why? Because goodness must be repaid in kind. The old man is lonely. No one cooks for him. The next day, the lady took the innkeepers to him, and in return she got another toy between the old man and the girl. A real friendship began. True, these warm relations were not long. One day during another visit, Kathy found the old man crying. When she asked him what was wrong, he bitterly replied, "No, my piggy had been stolen. It makes my heart bleed to think of what they'll do to him." Kathy was afraid to even think about the piglet's fate. Without thinking, she organized her girls. They went to look for the missing animals. The schoolgirls went all over the village, but no one had seen the trained pigs. The old man was so bored that he abandoned his craft. He did not let his guests into his house anymore either. Toward spring, the news spread through the village that Trevor had died. The whole village buried the hero, and ahead of the procession, militiamen in dress uniform carried on cushions the orders of the hero, and among the awards stood out the gold star. Many village children still had toys made by the old master. After Piglet disappeared, the old man gave away all his cocks and kitties to the children. Sam did not part with his schoolboy even when he grew a little older. He was only 2 years old when he learned to whistle a beep. Most of all amazed the boy. He often gave concerts at home for his sisters and brother. Camille did not interfere with the young talent. On the contrary, she tearfully watched the youngest son and said all in his father's father is just as rambunctious. That day, when Sam went with his mother to the city to see a doctor, he took with him his favorite skate, along with a toy. Brother disappeared without a trace. More than 40 years have passed since then, but Kathy remembers that fateful day forever. She even remembers what the morning had covered. There was a light rain, and her mother forgot to bring an umbrella. Kathy walked them to the parting and wanted to run home to get the umbrella. But Camille told her not to come back. "It's bad luck. We don't sugarcoat the pile. We don't give out in the rain." The weather improved by noon, but Mom came home alone. It was noticeably brighter outside the window. Kathy still sat as she was, fixing her gaze into the misty distance. In her hand was a burgundy-colored wooden horse. She thought that this color was inappropriate for such an animal, whereas such also painted the toy in an inappropriate color, and with a smile explained to her the blue bird that dreams come true. "I have a blue horse. I'd love to paint him a different color, but I've run out of paint. Only blue is left." Memories of the past calmed and soured the soul of the young woman a little. She realized that she had to find the boy Liam and find out from his mother how the unique toy fell into their hands. Clara has tried different professions in her long life. After school, she immediately entered a trade school, but quickly realized that she could not look a customer in the eye and at the same time hang him. Her fiancé worked as a bus driver, and Clara also lit up with the desire to drive a big machine. She even enrolled in a course that taught her how to drive a trolley bus. But after the tragic death of her young husband, she gave up this unsafe venture. Then she got a job at a restaurant through an acquaintance. In times of widespread shortages, it was the most enviable profession. Clara stayed in the restaurant industry until the 90s, and then everything went downhill as mushrooms from under the ground began to pop out of the new Russians, who bought up everything on which their eyes stopped. Their restaurant was also bought by a rich guy who bought it, and immediately began to reshuffle the staff. He called each employee to his office and in 2 minutes decided the fate of the person. Clara, he only asked a few questions too. "How old are you, lady, and what else can you do?" Except for making requests and preparing delivery notes. "Better. I'll be honest. I don't know anything else." The new restaurateur pointed her out the door. "I don't want any of those losers. I'm gonna have a high-end club here with beautiful girls performing." You don't look very marketable. I'm not a potato to be judged on my looks. Clara slammed the door loudly, wishing the new owner a quick ruin. In addition to financial loss, she also wished him to get dog shingles. There were other wishes that were not commonly spoken of. What happened to that creep? Clara doesn't know, but she heard that the restaurant she worked at lost customers and went bankrupt. The safety cushion she built up over the years didn't last long. Endless monetary reforms had done solid damage to her wealth. There was a period when she was supported, so she was happy for any job. Once again, former connections helped. At one time, Clara worked at the post office in the mail distribution department. Then she finished a course and went for promotion. The whole department saw Claudia Ivanovna off for a well-deserved retirement. They gave her a lot of expensive gifts and wished her a happy vacation. The woman rejoiced at her new status for a short time. Only 2 days on the third, she got bored and called Kathy, who had 2 more years to go before she could take her well-deserved vacation. Kathy, I'm bored. I want to work. And life took an upward trajectory. After much trial and error, she finally found her dream job. The woman was not at all embarrassed by the specifics of the activity because the dripping salary on the card was a lot of free time. Someone that fall day Clara burned with boredom. She reread the proceeds several times, but time was still moving very slowly. In her hearts, the woman rambled. At least her aunt would call. As soon as she got a new job, she disappeared from my radar. Barely she uttered these words as Clara's cell phone, twitched with a manicured finger, pressed the green button. "Hello, the president is listening to you." In response, she heard the angry voice of Clara's friend. "Will you stop acting like that? You're not sick of it yet. Why are you so angry? Did someone kick your tail? Or did the new boss yell at you? It's cool, really. I'm here for serious business, and you're all jokes. Laughter prolongs life. You should know that. Believe me, I'm not laughing right now. I'm crying. Tell me, what's going on with you again? You're not a woman. You're a walking disaster. That's why I'm calling you. When can I come over to your place?" The friends agreed on a time to meet, and Kathy, with heavy thoughts in her head, began to clean up. She remembered Emily's instructions and tried not to disturb the order of the chief's office, which she had never seen before. She noticed the dust on the shelves of thick file folders and began to carefully wipe them down. Suddenly, something sharp pricked her hand. The woman noticed a glint of glass between the folders. Her hand reached for the object, which turned out to be a picture frame. The photograph, too, was present in its proper place, but barely had the woman looked at it. Everything went cold inside her. In the picture was the same boy whom she had saved from trouble yesterday. The child was held by the hand of a tall, gray-haired man, in whom Kathy something seemed painfully familiar. She froze. For some reason, she couldn't take her eyes off the photograph. How long had she stood like that? She didn't know, but she woke up to footsteps approaching the office. Kathy put the photograph back down and began to wipe away the dust. The door opened. She turned sharply. It was the man in the photograph. He looked at her in surprise, and Kathy hurriedly said, "I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm a little late with the cleaning. I was just leaving." The man nodded silently and walked to his desk. Kathy did not bend her legs and went to the door. When she had already grabbed the handle, the supervisor called out to her. "Kathy, if I'm not mistaken," she stopped. Turned around. "Yes. I should warn you, I don't like to be cleaned up in front of me. Under other circumstances, I'd fire the employee. But in view of the fact that you're doing a very good job, I can't help but recognize that. I'll forgive you for the first time." Kathy nodded her head, though inside everything became, because she really wanted to answer this show-off. "I hear you. I'm sorry." She quietly shut the door behind her and pressed her back against it. Why was her heart pounding so hard? Is it because she got a scolding? No, it was more about that boy in the picture. Kathy knew she just had to find out where they got that toy. It couldn't have been a similar toy. No one's ever made one like it. How do you make it? She had no idea. So she looked at her watch and hurried to grab the mop. She really needed to talk. Ta always knows what to do, and even in the most desperate situations will find a way out. In the evening, the friends sat at the table. Clara poured tea and looked at Kathy carefully. Kathy, everything. Not Tommy. You look like the end of the world. Kathy took a huge drink and said honestly, I don't even know if it's the end of the world or the beginning. Clara raised her eyebrows. And I understand that you've thrown something out again. Kathy waved her hand. If I could deal with them myself. No, Clara, this is different, and I'm honestly at a loss. Remember I told you that my brother Clara was missing, even opened my mouth. Of course you did. How can you forget something like that? Only if I'm not mistaken, it's been about 30 years. Why do you remember that all of a sudden? Kathy automatically corrected it. It's been 40 years. You know, it's so weird. The day I shielded a boy from a skateboard. He put a toy in my hand, said his grandfather gave it to him, and it would bring me luck or something. I put it in my bag and forgot about it. And then I remembered it when I got home. You see, Clara, this may sound absurd, but it was Sam's toy. When he disappeared, Clara even picked on it, but she sat down right away. No, Kathy, you're definitely wrong. Well, think about it. It's been years. Yeah, there were tons of toys like that. And then you said his mom was very well dressed, all dressed up. So they're not poor. And you really think a kid's gonna play with a 40-year-old toy? No way. I get it. But look at this toy. It's definitely 40 years old. Besides, I couldn't be wrong, because this toy was made in front of me. Kathy took out the toy and handed her friend the galoshes, twirled it around for a long time, then set it on the chair. She frowned, then looked at her friend with a Sherlock Holmes look. So, what do we have? We have a piece of evidence that disappeared along with a child 40 years ago. 43 years old. Sam must be 48 years old now. Look, but if you're so sure, we should track down this boy and ask his parents about his grandfather. I don't know how to find him now, though. I found him. I mean his family. Or rather, I think his grandfather survived. And quite by chance, I saw a picture of them together. Kathy, what kind of person is that? You tell me where you saw the horse, even jumped up and walked around the kitchen. In general, she really wanted to smash her friend more painfully, so that she did not pull the cat by the tail. Clara, this picture is in Horford's office. Slammed them down on the chair, eyes bulging. Are you trying to tell me? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It looks like Horford is this boy's grandfather. Clara wrinkles her forehead. So, wait, what's Horford's name? Peter. Well, see, he's not Sam. I still don't know how he got that toy. What do I do, Clara? You've always given me the right advice. Now I just don't know what I'm supposed to do if I go to my boss with questions. I'm afraid I won't get any answers, and I'll be out of a job. Clara drummed her fingers on the table. Yes, we do. Here's the thing, girlfriend. I say we wait a little while. In the meantime, gather everything you can find out about his family. We could use it. Kathy stared at her friend in horror. How am I going to do that? Impatiently, she shrugged her shoulder. I don't know. I'll be more attentive to conversations, listening, looking out. I'll have to look it up on the internet. Oh my God. How am I supposed to do that? I'd rather just brush it off again. I'll take care of that. Seeing the confused look, my friend laughed. Do not be frightened. I also do not know how to handle the internet. The thing is that next to us is a small park. There often gathers young people, all so advanced, and games on the internet discuss. So of course, they never have any money. But they want to go to the toilet. Apparently, they're not completely lost because they don't shit in the park. He comes to ask me, and I put him down, but only when the bosses are gone. I'm going to ask them to look him up on the internet. As Kathy was leaving, Clara said conspiratorially, lowering her voice, "Meet me in exactly 1 week at the same place." Kathy took a swing at her friend. Oh, come on, you college. No seriousness at all. If you knew how hard this is for me right now. Clara immediately became serious. Kathy, don't take offense. I see what I'm trying to do, just to cheer you up a little bit. As soon as Kathy entered the apartment, both her son-in-law and daughter came out to meet her. They crossed their arms across their chests and stared at her in silence. Kathy realized that some unpleasant conversation was about to take place again, and even managed to think that if it hadn't been for Robert, she would probably have asked them to move out by now. Waiting for her tenants to get started, she didn't start on her own. But what happened this time while I was away? I hope you remembered to pick up your child from daycare. Kelly looked indignantly at her son-in-law and spoke. It's us, Mom, who would like to know what's going on with you. You've stopped being at home altogether. You finish work, and then you disappear somewhere. We had movie tickets for tonight, by the way. Kathy shrugged. But nobody told me anything about a movie. Mom, you're an old man. It's only natural that you should go home after work. Why should I warn you? Kelly's voice grew higher and higher, and her son-in-law nodded in agreement. Kathy looked at him, then stopped her gaze on her daughter. First of all, I don't owe anyone anything. In the second place, well, if I'm elderly, I can't have a case. Thirdly, I am very tired. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I'm going to lie down. She moved with her shoulder her daughter and son-in-law, who even lost the power of speech. She went to her room, closed the door firmly behind her, and sat down on the bed. She took out a brandy and sat for a long time, clasping it in the palm of her hand. Memory obligingly suggested scenes from the past, and large tears rolled down Kathy's cheeks. She thought she couldn't take it for a week. But Peter was away on some kind of business trip, so even if Kathy had dared to talk to him, she wouldn't have caught him. But his departure had a very bad effect on the staff. They became more relaxed. The first person Kathy learned anything from was Emily. They bumped into each other in the hallway just a day after Horford left. Kathy, am I glad to see you? I've been coming in so clean, I've forgotten the last time I saw you. Kathy was a little embarrassed. I try not to show my face too much. You know, away from the bosses. Emily laughed. But I'm not the boss. You don't have to hide from me. You know what, Kathy? I see you're done. Come to my office. We'll have tea, sit and talk. Will you tell me how your relatives are doing? Kathy wanted to refuse at once, but stopped herself. Emily had known Peter for a long time. She might have something interesting to say. Well, thank you. I'd be delighted to accept your invitation. I'll just have to put everything in before I go. Oh, great. Then I'll be waiting for you. During the unsuccessful conversation, Kathy learned that Horford had come here with his family not long ago from some distant town, and that Peter's son had already married here, and that his daughter-in-law was not so good. Kathy, of course, was glad of this information. She had already guessed that her daughter-in-law was no good. But why should she be judged? All young people are like that nowadays. Take her daughter, for example. That's all she'd learned all week. Kathy's day off, she started packing first thing in the morning. Kelly looked at her apprehensively. Mom, where are you going? It's the weekend. We thought you'd be home. That's right, it's my day off. So I'm resting. But Kathy looked at her daughter questioningly and turned around and shouted to Tony, come here. Kathy looked with interest at her son-in-law, who came out of the room with a travel bag in his hands. He asked irritably, you know I'm packing. Kelly replied, looks like you may not be packing. Our mom poured out somewhere for us again. And my son-in-law even dropped his bag. What do you mean we have to leave in an hour? Kathy realized that her kids hadn't bothered to tell her they were going out again. Apparently not as clear. She explained to them that she was no longer their servant. I don't understand now. You lost your keys to the apartment or you're going somewhere. I don't keep them. Tony. The thing is, we were going out with some friends. Kathy nodded. That's a good thing. Go sure. Just get some mosquito repellent. Robert can't stand them. Tony and Kelly looked at each other confused. But we weren't planning on taking Robert. It's adults only. That's interesting. What about you? you have a baby. Kathy understood everything perfectly well and even thought of something to occupy a shot glass while they would talk and drink tea. But she didn't want to give up so easily. But we thought you'd stay with Robert. You haven't been paying any attention to your grandson lately. Well, that's a bit of a stretch. I think a child should have more contact with his parents, and these trips should be pre-arranged. Kathy was starting to shop, and Kelly immediately recognized the change in her mother's mood. In general, lately her mother had become very nervous and could scold them even for something. But she had never done that before. "Mommy, please forgive us for not warning you. But if we refuse, we will really let everyone down." Kelly looked at her with such belittling eyes that Kathy waved her hand. "What am I supposed to do with you guys? Robert, pack up and let's go." Robert jumped out of the room with joyful squeals. He loved Kathy because she was fun and allowed him to do everything. Clara opened the door with a very puzzled look. "Oh, what a lot of people to see me. And me, as I knew I'd have cherry pie. How do you like it, Robert?" The boy immediately disappeared into the kitchen, and Kathy threw off her coat. "You have Clara's face. Let me tell you what the boys found. You'll have one, too." Kathy stared at her friend. "I take it your little geniuses found something interesting. Come on, tea's getting cold. I'll tell you all about it. Well, for starters, Peter's not from around here. He moved recently." Kathy interrupted her. "I already know that. You don't have to make a mysterious face." Kathy gave her a puzzled look. "You know, not all of Peter's parents lived here before. Then at one point they broke away and went to Faroe, Siberia. And now pay attention. The question when they did. Kathy didn't understand anything. And when was it? A month after your brother went missing?" Yes, the effect was even better than Clara could have expected. Kathy had gone pale. So Clara grabbed some valerian on the hood. "You don't have to go out with your grandson afterwards. You'll smell." "Well, I still don't get it. You think they took Sam away. But why? And most importantly, he's Peter, not Sam." "Come on, Kathy, don't be such a baby. Apparently, your boss's parents were very well-to-do. So you don't think they'd take the boy away and leave him their name?" "Yeah, you're probably right. But why did Clara shrug her shoulders?" "I don't know. But the boys told me that Peter was their only son. They did the math, and it turns out his mom gave birth to him when he was 44. You know what I mean?" Kathy shook her head again. "No, I don't. They probably didn't have kids, and it was too late to have kids." Kathy had it all figured out in her head. "What does it turn out to be?" "It's a very interesting story. By the way, his son started some kind of business in another city. His father is helping him, but his daughter-in-law is threatening to file for divorce because the city doesn't suit her." Kathy sat in silence. To be honest, now she was even more confused about what she should do. Well, she wouldn't go to her master to find out if he was her brother or not. Kathy, did you fall asleep?" "Kathy's awake." "No, I'm sorry. I was just thinking." "Kathy, what do you think you're gonna do?" "I don't know. I mean, he might not even want to listen to me. I'll lose my job, and I won't find out anything." "That's true, too. But you can't just live like that now." Kathy nodded. "So you go and find out, and we'll figure something out about the job. Don't forget, I've had people come to see me like you wouldn't believe." After an hour, Robert grew bored, and the lady began to pack. Clara, standing in the hallway, gave her advice. "You don't go straight in. First, show him the toy, and then tell him how you saved his grandson, and only then everything else, so he doesn't kick you out right away. That way, he'll at least listen." Kathy, who had already taken her coat, suddenly lowered her hand to Clara. "What if it isn't him? Well, could Sam have lost a toy or given it as a gift or something?" "Of course he could have, but if you don't talk, he won't know." Kathy realized that our words had everything in them. But all she could think about now was that if Peter didn't talk to Sam, she was going to be in a lot of pain, almost just like it had been when her little brother had gone missing. "Grandma, Grandma Kathy woke up, looked at her grandson who was dragging her by the hand. "What, Robert, let's go. Let's go quickly, there is already a competition there." Kathy sighed. Surely they would be looking at those young boys again, who were not sure why they were risking themselves on those planks with wheels. They had been standing at the fence for about half an hour, when someone nearby said, "Grandpa, look, there she is." Kathy turned around indifferently at the voice. She didn't think the words were about her. And then she froze. In front of them stood the same boy. Behind him towered her boss, Peter. "Hello." He too looked at the company cleaner, confused. "Hello, Kathy. My grandson told me about being rescued by a woman, but I had no idea that the woman would be you." She smiled weakly. "Nonsense. I didn't realize how it happened. I'm sorry. Is there some way I can thank you for not needing you?" "It's completely unnecessary. I have something to give you." The boys were already playing catch-up, and Kathy and Peter walked over to a vacant bench and sat down. "What are these horses?" Liam accepted the toy as if it were a jewel. "Thank you very much. This toy means a lot to me." And then Kathy made up her mind. "I know, because it's with you from your past life, since you were a child." He looked at her in surprise. "Your grandson told you that?" She shook her head. "Peter, if you have time, I would like to tell you a story that happened in my family. 40-odd years ago, she definitely saw the man turn pale and immediately began to speak. When she finished the knuckles with which Liam was clutching the toy, without raising her eyes, she spoke. "I had a very good family. And not even in the sense that I always had everything, in that I was very loved, and I was loved. My parents were willing to do anything for me. The only thing that bothered me a little bit was that I didn't remember my early childhood at all. But by the time I was 14, I kind of calmed down because I was surrounded by other things. But then, when I was in my 30s, my wife died. I was in such shock, in such prostration, that I shut myself down. I didn't care about my son. I didn't care about my mom. And by then she was all I had left. Questions began to arise in my head. But I didn't look for answers, because I put it all down to the peculiarities of a child's organism. I even read somewhere that if a child has experienced some stress, the brain can simply block. It took me a few years to come to my senses. But as soon as I came to my senses, my mother got sick. I tried to be near her as much as possible, knowing very well that very soon she would leave us. We talked a lot. And one day I asked a question Mom with me as a child. Nothing happened to me. Then for some reason I did not remember anything at all. Mom suddenly cried. Said she couldn't take this secret to the grave. She began to tell me how she and my father wanted children, but nothing worked. Back then, of course, medicine was not as advanced as it is now. So in time they had to come to terms with it. They were already thinking of taking a child from an orphanage. But I don't know why they kept stalling. That day they made up their minds. But they decided to go only to another town not far from where they lived. Why was it a miracle I slowed down? Because it was only at the last moment that I saw a child sitting on the road. It was me. My mom said they also caught a glimpse of a woman running across the field. They didn't chase her because she looked like a crazy person. My mom grabbed me in her arms and started to calm me down. There was no village nearby. Where did I come from? They never understood. But at that very moment, my mom decided that I would be better off with them than with such parents who allowed such a thing to happen. I didn't believe it. I begged my mother to tell me it wasn't true, because my whole world crumbled in an instant. But she talked and talked and talked, pouring on the details. I only came to this town because they were from here. Kathy gently touched his arm. So you're my brother, Sam. He looked at her strangely, then turned. I'm sorry. I don't know. It's all kind of weird. Scary, even. Of course, I came here hoping to find out more. But now, I think I've learned too much for my own good. Kathy, I have to ask why my mother did this to me. Kathy stood up. Mother, no. Are you all thinking wrong? Mother excused herself for just a minute to go to the bathroom, asked an elderly woman to look after you. She was found. Then it turned out she wasn't herself. They let her out of the hospital every now and then, and she rode the trains aimlessly. She didn't remember taking a child out of the carriage, although someone recognized her, and certainly didn't remember where it had gone. Mom was sick at once. Not a day went by that she didn't go crazy. By the way, there's only 4 of us in the family. Do you have another brother and sister? Peter grabbed his head. Bullshit, that's crazy. It doesn't work like that. There's no such thing as a movie plot in real life. Kathy, to be honest, was expecting a slightly different reaction. She was now watching the man who, grasping her grandson's hand, was walking quickly down the path. She smiled. Well, that's all right. He is also understandable. He's an oligarch. She's a cleaning lady. The main thing is that now she knows for sure. Sam is alive and doing well. Kathy called out to Robert, and they headed for home, not missing the ice cream stand, of course. Monday morning, she called Emily and told her she was sick. She also told them to look for a new cleaning lady because she was quitting. But Kathy, everything was already fine. Maybe you're not happy with the paycheck. I'll talk to Peter, and I think he'll make it up to me. No, you don't have to. It's just a family emergency. I'm sorry, Emily, I'm sorry. Several times my daughter looked in the room. Once, even a son-in-law stopped by. Finally, Kelly couldn't take it anymore. They came into her room. All of them. Mom, what's going on? Are you sick? Kathy sat up on the bed. What are you worried about? That I'm not going to work. And my son-in-law stepped forward. You're wrong, Kathy. I just got paid more than I bargained for, and Kelly will get paid soon. So if you're sick, we wanted to tell you not to worry about anything. Kathy looked at her son-in-law in surprise, at the daughter in Peter's eyes. But she didn't have time to answer because the doorbell rang. Tony went to open it, and Kelly sat down on her bed. Well, really, you're not sick, are you? No, Kelly, I'm fine. Are you? Kathy didn't tell their daughter anything. She felt ashamed, not for herself, but for Peter. She found her brother, and he ran right away from her, apparently afraid that she or they would ask for money. But she didn't need his money. The main thing is that he is alive. The brother-in-law came back into the room. His eyes were like saucers. Kathy, that's the one Horford's asking for you. Kathy stood up. Tears flowed quickly down her cheeks. Kelly looked at her fearfully. Peter was already entering the room. He was holding a huge bouquet of roses. He stopped 2 steps away from her and said, Well, hello, sister. I'm sorry it took me a while to digest all this. He put his arms around Kathy, and they stood like that for a long time. Kathy was crying. Peter's eyes were closed. Kelly looked from Peter to her mother, then to her husband. Then she asked, I don't understand. Kathy's little sister wiped away her tears. She smiled. Well, this is Kelly, your Uncle Sam. This is Kelly, my daughter. This is Tony, my son-in-law. Well, Robert, you already know. Peter hugged Kelly, then Tony, leaving him completely stunned. But I'll introduce you to my son, too. He'll be here soon. The grandson finally got a skateboard, and he's already fallen off it. Now Dad's taking him to the hospital to get his knees scanned and rented. He turned to Kathy again. You know, Kathy, now I feel like I remember you. I can't say for sure, but I feel like it. The evening passed noisily. Peter was very easy to get along with. His son was immediately interested in Tony's work. And then when it came to computers, they went into the other room. The thing is, Ole's cousin had started his own business in that area. Kelly already knew that the brother was single again, that his wife, as soon as she found out that she had to go to the hole or stay at her father-in-law's house, immediately made a pen, leaving her son to his father. So Kelly was going hard over all the unmarried girlfriends in her head, because a good man should be married and know. Peter and Kathy were looking at old and new pictures, and Frank, Miranda, where are they? That we could meet them. We very rarely talk to them. They started dividing up the inheritance on the day of the funeral, and then they went their separate ways. Kathy, promise me we'll visit them at least once. How does it go? Okay. When Peter and his son and grandson were about to leave, Kathy said quietly to Peter, "Perhaps we should go to the cemetery to visit my parents." "Yes, Kathy definitely should. I'm sorry what happened to your husband. I saw a picture of him standing in front of our firm. But it wasn't your firm then. The bosses were saving money on everything. There was an accident. 4 people died, and they took the blame." Peter frowned. "You mean nobody got paid anything?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." He looked up at her. "You know, even though I wasn't there, I'm all about justice. Can you find the next of kin of the people who died?" "Sure. Let them know I'm expecting them on Friday." 2 days later, they were standing at the grave. Mom was strict. She was busy. You realize there were 4 of us. And Dad made a pen. She just didn't have time for sentimentality, but she loved us very much because when you were lost, she never got back to normal and ended up going crazy. Peter knelt down in front of his mother's grave. "Mom, I don't remember you at all, but I'm sure I loved you as much as you loved me. I'm a little late, but I promise you, I will come to you often and tell you how I lived without you." Kathy brushed away the tears with a smile. "I'm sure she sees everything and is very happy for us."